Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lord Kalisha Kale. Welcome to the Time Debates.
Imagine a world where technology would help us to learn from our forefathers and foremothers. What would we do with it? Picture, if you will, a time center that allows us to draw upon our ancestors' wisdom in order to enhance our understanding of some of the decisions that they made. With this time vortex, a spiraling gateway that opens up a corridor to the past in order to bring to your watching eyes the Time Debates.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our next Time Debate. I'm your host, Lord Kalisha Kale. Tonight's debate features former President and principal framer of the Declaration of Independence of the United States, Mr. Thomas Jefferson, and legendary figure, human rights survivalist, Queen of Monticello, Miss Sally Hemmings. We welcome both of you. Today's debate will be on the concept of love, the art and proof of love. Miss Hemmings, we believe in ladies first. You may open the debate.
Good day, family. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to debate Mr. Jefferson, my former owner. This is a monumental moment because for the first time, a slave will be able to express their true feelings without fear of reprisal. The topic of physical love is a subject that I am unfamiliar with. As to the art of making love, that too is a mystery to me. My understanding of love is a family concept. Real love is a comfort zone, a cocoon of protection that mothers and fathers create for their children. It is that same love that brothers and sisters share. It is in this area that I spent most of my life cultivating and expressing what I believe is true love. My interactions with Mr. Jefferson can hardly be defined as love. For how can a broken slave love a master? Why would a master even profess to love a slave? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hemmings. Next up, President Jefferson. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you for inviting me and finally giving me the opportunity to express my true feelings for the beautiful Sally Hemmings. I can tell that times have changed drastically. The very fact that the moderator of this debate is a Negro, the fact that a blackie is in charge of a debate where American white men are sharing an auditorium with their former slaves has proven my Constitution correct. In my time, this was not possible. I wrote about this in my first draft of the free black man standing next to the free white man, and it was rejected by the fine delegates that signed the Constitution. It was then that I realized that no relationship of the mixed nature would be accepted in our new fledgling country. You must understand that if I am to talk about love, I have to talk about the highest love, which is God, then country, and then man. It is that love that gave me the intestinal fortitude to protect Sally, love Sally, and give her children a safe haven to grow and mature in the world. On Monticello, my estate, I created one of America's first thriving interracial communities. Sally was treated better than any slave in the history of our nation. That shows you the depth of my love for her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to open the debate with a simple question. Considering that you were 54 when you first bedded down 14-year-old Sally Hemmings, would you, sir, consider this consensual or your constitutional right as an owner?
Thank you for that question, sir. Let me first state that it is the constitutional right for every man to bed down his wife or his property. It is an inalienable right given to the caretakers of this planet by God. Even though my feelings ran deep for Sally and my former wife, a man does not have to have love to purge his loins. America has become a soft spot in the world because it is the nation hell-bent on trying to understand feelings. That is time wasted. One must not feel, one must do. That gives a man purpose and focus. Now, the other part of your question, Sally being 14, Sally was of breeding age. Her body was young, firm, and supple. She was a handsome young woman, possessing qualities essential to the excitement of a man. The fact that I chose her above all women shows that I did have a measure of love for her. Sally traveled the world with me, living in France on her own as a free woman who chose to return to Monticello with me. She could have stayed in France where she lived freely, but the way I treated her and the love I showed her, that she understood, and she could never get that on her own. So my answer to you is that it was consensual, and that she was of the breeding age, and there was nothing wrong with the 40 years that bridge our lives. Thank you.
Miss Hemmings, your response, please.
I would like to address the age part of your questions first. I don't know if I was 14 summers old because we slaves didn't have birth certificates. So everything that you have read about me has come from the perspective of those who owned me. For the sake of this debate, let's say I was 14 summers old. My body was young. I do know that every time he enjoyed a pelvic thrust on my young body, it initially hurt. You see, I was not wined and dined like my white sister was. In case none of you know, Thomas was married to my sister. That's how I became his property. And after he mourned her death, he went to Paris and sent for his baby daughter and me. I am convinced that he wasn't as interested in being a father as he was in being a fornicator with me. There wasn't a long conversation about if I want to be in his bed, but rather a gentle demand of a master to his slave. I don't believe I even had the right to say no. Which brings us to the second part of your question, the age gap between the two of us. Thomas had over 600 slaves, and I can honestly say that I don't know what any of the male slaves look like. I don't dare raise an eye to judge their look for fear that I may cause them to be beaten or sold off. So if I am living my life in fear for those around me, how can I possibly understand love for another? Especially one who says he loves me while he owns me.
Sally, how can you say those things to me? You're talking like I raped you.
Mr. Jefferson, the beauty of this debate is that you can no longer have the power to dictate to me what I can or cannot say. Today, you are talking to an accomplished Sally Hemmings, a mature, confident, and free black woman. And I won't be mansplained about my feelings by you or any other male ogre. And you may want to check your tone there, Mr. Jefferson. This ain't that 14-year-old that you commanded. This ain't that 18-year-old that you bargained with. This ain't that 53 years old grandmother that buried your rotten bones on Monticello and walked off that damn plantation. I am Sally Hemmings, a survivor of you and that evil system of slavery that you, sir, are an architect of.
Family, let's become a spirited opening to this debate. Let's move to phase 2. The question is, did the white man create a loveless society, making it impossible to experience universal love?
Thank you for asking me that question, son. Once again, I point out that we are here dealing with feelings. Let me be frank. Of course the white man created a loveless society. You can't get the best out of your slaves if they're walking around in love. We did, however, create an honest society. The white man had all the brains and the black man had all the muscle. So it was God that chose us to rule over you. The truth is, you were ignorant wretches. God ordained this in the Bible, in Leviticus 25, verse 44 to 46. Now the truth is that we ruled over you with a delicate hand. We only punished those bad slaves that deserved it. I had 600 niggers in my lifespan. I would not have been a successful businessman, a successful property owner, and successful politician had I spent my days doting over those less fortunate than me. Yes, we created a harsh society, but it was needed. Those niggers came out of the jungles of Africa. They were wild and savage, uncivilized, untamed. Just look at my work. As this society has grown, you can see the benefits received by the modern Negro. Your freedoms today happened only because of the society built by me and my peers. We trained you up. Now you can do almost anything the white man can do. So, did we create a loveless society? Maybe, but it was a dignified society, one that has stood the test of time. And to be honest with you, the rhetoric coming from the White House today by President Trump is eerily close to the rhetoric of my day. So I should be asking you, with all that searching for feelings, have you created a loving society? Because it is definitely not reflected by your White House administration. Thank you.
Ms. Hemmings, you have the floor. May I ask if you agree with Mr. Jefferson?
Well, how can a monster experience or create love? It's not in their genes. But in spite of the painful mistreatment of my people, they did help create a bond within us, a bond that will outlast any society. You see, as a slave, all you have is Jesus and love. And when a mother asks a master to beat her instead of her child, she is showing the master the love for that child. When a slave runs away and is helped by strange Negroes, they are showing a brotherly love. When we are able to congregate on Sundays to enjoy that one moment of bliss and freedom, we are showing love. So I agree with Mr. Jefferson when he says that he and his peers did not create a loving society, but we slaves did. And that love was passed on from generation to generation. It is one that is constant in the black family. Even when you have bitter divisions, we find a way back to love. The highest form of love for me was displayed in my agreement with Mr. Jefferson to return to Monticello. I agreed to leave the freedom of living in France and return back to the hellhole in Virginia, only if he agreed to free my children of 21. I want you all to understand that this is a sex pact. I became pregnant in Paris, and he used my enslaved, impoverished position to manipulate me into this deal. I could have stayed in France, but alone, broke and dependent on the charity of others. Or I could return with my Mr. Jefferson and bargain to have my children freed. He clearly was not prepared to lose me for nothing.
Sally, that is not accurate. I made a deal with you and your brother that if he returns to Monticello and teaches his trade as a chef to another slave, I would release him. If you agreed to return to Monticello, I would free any of your children when they turned 21. I made them stay until they were 21 to save them from a world that would have devoured them.
In the words of these new brothers and sisters, Thomas, that's a stinking ass lie. When my daughters became 21, you provided $50 and a carriage ride off of Monticello for both of them. Then you listed them as runaways. You weren't even honorable enough to list them as free black women. On your deathbed, old, feeble, broken down, and weak, you still could not become a real man. Your trifling ass only freed 5 of the 138 slaves, and I wasn't even one of them. Thanks to your daughter, my niece, I was allowed to live out the last 10 years of my life with my son in Cincinnati. So if you are going to tell it right, nigga.
Finally, what would you like historians to know about your relationship with Sally, and what is to be learned from it?
Times were different in the 18th and 19th century. I was responsible for building a nation. It was I that wrote the words in the preamble to the Constitution to form a more perfect union. And I spent a lifetime working toward that perfect union. A union today where we see mixed couples all over the world. That was my dream. It took a lot of courage for me to create a mixed society on Monticello. I was not selfish. Did I claim Sally's children as my own? Hell no. But I did that more to protect Sally and her children. Trust me, it was not to protect my political career. Sally and my relationship was outed in a newspaper when I was president, and I still won re-election. Sex scandals are nothing new to white people. You must understand that white men have bedded down black women for centuries. There's no crime in that. Sex with slaves for a master was a moment of release, a moment when he was able to release all the frustrations of the day into his property. Is that a bad thing? How could it be? Is there anyone hurt by this action? That is why we call our wenches concubines. If I were to borrow from one of Sally's phrases, young brothers today would call her a side piece. Now, those of you judging me, ask yourself, do you really love your side piece? Or is she just an empty hole to release your jism? It seems to me she is nothing more than a 21st century cum dump. So judge me if you will, but I promise you, I have spent more time and money on my side piece than 99.9% of you judgmental niggas today.
Did he say side piece? Side piece. He just said that I was his side piece. Well, if a side piece means that you never care about someone's feelings, then I guess that would be accurate. If a side piece means that you walk by your black children in order to play with your white grandchildren, then yes, I was his side piece. If a side piece means that you can take advantage of their body yet never ask, is it okay? Then I guess I was his side piece. In my day, we were called concubines or bed warmers, but the truth is, I was his beautiful piece of property, a delicate toy that he could mount whenever he needed. I endured all these things for 40 years so that my children would have the opportunity to live a life of freedom. I don't know this man. I am not sure that he even has a soul. For a man to father as many beautiful children as he did, and never acknowledge them as his own while betting their mother is a sign of a monster. Think about it. Even wild animals recognize their children. If Thomas is what men are supposed to be, then this country should tear itself down and start from scratch. We were invited here to talk about love. I love my children. I love my descendants. I love that they fought for my recognition for over 200 years, and I love that they proved my true role in Monticello. I truly appreciate their efforts. But my children, my descendants, are Hemmings. They are not Jefferson. All Thomas did was spend a few moments and donate a few pitiful pelvic thrusts briefly in my life. He is unworthy of love and unqualified for this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hemmings and Mr. Jefferson. We want to thank all of you for attending today's debate about love and give a round of applause to our two debaters. Former President of the United States Thomas Jefferson and legendary icon, courageous Mrs. Sally Hemings. The Jefferson-Hemings situation was not an ideal relationship for any woman. Sally was 14 and Mr. Jefferson was in his 50s when they became intimate. We could never truly know how much love she had for Mr. Jefferson, if any. What we do know is that Sally was a formidable politician and negotiator in her own right. She bargained for freedom for all of her children, and she also crossed over into glory as a free woman. Her courage is legendary and should be celebrated in every black home. We watch mothers all across this land sacrifice for their children, and rarely do they get any credit for it. So in the spirit of Ma'atic love, I say bravo to Queen Sally Hemings for her life and for her example of grace and dignity in the worst situation any of us could imagine. I also want to say that this nation has a history of making heroes out of monsters like Thomas Jefferson. He should not be elevated in the chronicles of history because of his exceptional writing skills. He spoke passionately for the freedom of white people while enslaving the black man. Thomas Jefferson and men like him are the great traitors to this nation because they had the power to truly create a colorblind society, and they failed miserably at that humane task. Thank you for watching this week's Time Debates, and catch up with us next week. I'm your host, Lord Khalif Shaquille, and remember, we are Chocolate Rain.